Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming out this evening. I'm Melissa Fisher-Isaacs. I'm the Information Services Supervisor here at the library. This is a series that we host every year, Civic Engagement 101, and really our goal behind this series is to provide you with information to make choices about topics that are important to our community. And so we're excited to partner with the League of Women Voters and the NAACP. And this series is also sponsored this year by Kansas Public Radio. Just want to give you a heads up that this program is being recorded and will be posted to the library's YouTube channel in a few days. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol. Excited to hear the discussion tonight.
And if you want to If you want to grab that URL for the library's YouTube channel, it's on a handout back there, or it's on a poster back there by the back door. Well, welcome to our forum on renewable energy and energy conservation in Douglas County and in Kansas. It's part of the Civic Engagement 101 series. As you heard Melissa say, that's sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lawrence Douglas County and the Lawrence Public Library and other community partners like KPR. I'm Carol Williamson, a member of our local league, and I'm honored to be the moderator for this forum. Our panel tonight includes Kathy Richardson, down here on the end. Sorry, we don't have a correct nameplate for her. She's sitting in for Lisa Larson, who sadly is ill, and her daughter Luna is with us tonight too, so that's all of our joy to have Luna with us tonight. Commissioner Patrick Kelly is here, County Commissioner Patrick Kelly. Dr. Dorothy Daley, KU School of Public Affairs and Administration and KU Environmental Studies. Ms. Julie Kong is a Free State High School student, and Mr. Zack Pistora is the lobbyist for the Kansas Sierra Club. And panelists, thank you very much for participating in this public information tonight. Audience, thank you for seeking to be informed, involved citizens. Our Lawrence League of Women Voters is engaged in a multi-year study of renewable energy and energy conservation in Douglas County and in Kansas, and we're so pleased that you can join us tonight and jump into the conversation. We also hope you'll give us some input. Our study is based on evidence that we need to reduce the burning of fossil fuels through renewable energy and energy conservation to meet our energy needs and address climate concerns. Tonight, our discussion will take a broad view of renewable energy and energy conservation topics. After the forum, the panelists will be available to visit with individual audience members and if you have questions. And we also have an audience survey. It's on a card by the entrance back there. Don't need to pick it up now, but we hope you'll take time to complete it today. And we will share your responses with our league, our study group in our League of Women Voters to gain your insights on these important topics. Our questions for our panelists will start with Kathy Richardson, representing the City of Lawrence. In what renewable energy and energy conservation initiatives is the City of Lawrence currently engaged? And please tell us about the timeline of these initiatives and the city's goals.
Good evening, everyone. Kathy Richardson. I am the Director of Sustainability for the City of Lawrence. I've been in this role for about 2 years, but I have been with the city for 22 years, 20 years with the Solid Waste Division, lots of recycling and composting and other projects there. So for the City of Lawrence, when we talk about renewable energy and energy conservation, there are several kind of important documents and goals that the City of Lawrence has. Number one, I always need to mention our strategic plan. Our strategic plan has a KPI, so a key performance indicator, under our Connected City outcome. Outcome is the work that the city's in the business to do. That cross-sections with our environmental sustainability commitment. And how it shows up in our strategic plan is through our city facilities, we are trying to achieve 100% clean renewable energy. So it's measuring the percentage of renewable energy that our facilities are using. So that's one document. The other document that's important to mention is our ordinance 9744. Our city commission adopted our ordinance, which is our, renewable energy goal. That we're striving for 100% clean renewable energy for all energy sectors. So that includes electricity, natural gas, transportation, all of it. And it's not just for city operations. The ordinance does also talk about community-wide 100% clean renewable energy. So we're striving for that as well. There is a timeline within our ordinance. The first kind of important date or year is 2025. So that's the year that the city was striving to have 100% clean renewable energy on our electricity use for the city facilities. Then by 2035 is the timeline for all energy sectors, so electricity, natural gas, transportation, et cetera, as well as that's the year for the community-wide all energy sector timeline. So this ordinance that was passed in 2020 has created a lot of work for the city of Lawrence as we got started on trying to achieve those goals. I will say that the City of Lawrence City Commission did approve for the city manager to enter into a direct renewable participation service agreement with Evergy, and that is our wind renewable energy credits. So we currently cover 100% of our electric use for city operations with covering, purchasing these credits on the wind renewable energy. That is something that shows up in that dashboard for our strategic plan information. Looks like Luna wants to participate in this. Some of our projects for actual on-site renewable energy. So we do have a few facilities that have solar. Prairie Park Nature Center, Fire Station number 5. We did a pilot also with a parking lot light at City Hall that has solar. And the Santa Fe train depot also has solar. Most of these are covering about the offsets like about 20% of the electricity use. And then the newest facilities are new Central Station, where the transit folks have moved to, and that has solar panels as well. The City of Lawrence is looking at grant opportunities to expand our renewable energy on site. So we are looking for funding so that we can add solar panels to our wastewater treatment plants, our water treatment plant, our police headquarters, more fire stations. And one thing that we do have in the CIP and planned is our Municipal Services and Operations campus, which is going to be fairly big. That is the largest department the city has of over 300 employees. So we are continuing to look for those opportunities. When it comes to renewable energy policies for residents, I do know that even before this this ordinance, we did, back in 2013, we did have the Lawrence Commission vote to reduce the building permit fees for installing solar, so from $1,000 to the $65 fee. So that was a pretty big drop. Just on the energy conservation really quick, since I'm wrapping up here, the city also engaged in a facilities conservation improvement program. We call it FCIP. And that is where the city hired a consultant to do an energy audit of all our city facilities. And through that, we did identify ways that we could save money. So the city commission approved $11.3 million for upgrades to our city facilities that would be the equivalent of then saving $450,000 per year for the city. I we'll mention the other items maybe in the next question. There's a lot.
And that city ordinance 9744, we do have a copy of that if you'd like to see that. We'll have that at the back table. Next up is Commissioner Kelly from the County Commission. A similar question, in what energy, renewable energy and energy conservation initiatives is Douglas County currently engaged? And please tell us about the timeline for those initiatives and the county's goals.
Sure, thanks, Carol, and thanks for having me. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to broaden our perspective a little bit from away from just energy and renewable energy to our countywide climate action plan. How many are familiar with that plan? Yes, a couple of you. That's great. So that actually started out of Plan 2040. It calls for a climate action plan in there. The city, as Kathy has talked about, did some work in 2020. But we really wanted to look at countywide, so engaging with Baldwin, the city of Lawrence, Lecompton, Eudora, and our unincorporated area to think about how we're reacting to climate change on the whole. It's not, I don't believe, if we get too focused on just renewable energy, we're not thinking about the wide number of problems that are happening because we're seeing climate change. And even though renewable energy might drive that back the other way, climate change is here, right? And it is happening now. And so we have to think about the economic costs, the social costs, and the environmental costs of climate change and how we're going to adapt to that. I encourage you to take a look at the plan. I'll go through a few pieces of it here specifically around energy, but we really need to hand it, and Kathy was part of it, to our planning team, because while it'd be really nice to say that the county commission is responsible and we approved it, we aren't, right? The sustainability office did a tremendous job. I think we should be really proud of the engagement work that we did on that. Not only did we do surveys and forums and those things that we're also fairly used to, we actually hired a number of community engagement people to go out and interview people who are certainly impacted. We're all impacted by climate change. We all use energy in one way or another. But actually going out and interviewing over 110 people to ask them what's happening, what's their lived experience, and what knowledge do they have about energy consumption and climate change and ways that we might, only when we use everyone's collective energy, collective knowledge, maybe energy is not the right word there, but everyone's collective knowledge, I think we'll figure out as a community how to move forward on this really daunting challenge for us. Let's start with some big picture things and then move down to some specific strategies. So we, in 2022, did our very first greenhouse gas emissions inventory for Douglas County. We worked with the International Council for Local Environment Initiatives. I did have to write that down. I can't memorize those kind of things. And the local we determined that our buildings are the largest user of energy. That's probably not anyone's surprise, right? But 28% is our residential and 26% is commercial. So that means that over half of our energy consumption is in our buildings right now. If we could reduce that energy consumption even by a little bit, we might make a lot of progress towards the goals. So you're asking, so that's great, Patrick, what are the goals? So when we look at climate neutrality from the Paris Agreement that asks everyone to be climate neutral by 2050, it's important to know that every community is a little different by how much they use and by how much they generate as well. For Douglas County, it's actually over 50. We'd need to reduce our emissions by over 50%. We didn't, the planning committee, the steering committee didn't think that's a lot, over 60%. So they set a goal at 38.5% to reduce emissions by 2030. That would get us on track to where we need to be by 2050. We'll do that greenhouse gas inventory every 3 years to determine how much progress we're making on it. Okay, so now we've got a goal, like how do we get there? This is where we have specific strategies and specific goals within our plan. Some of them are reduce energy consumption while increasing access to renewable resources, right? And that isn't just thinking about large-scale solar and rooftop solar. Those are really important things. It's also how can we get better efficiency out of the buildings that we have? How can we retrofit buildings so that they're more energy efficient? We're doing that at the local government level. We're building the Judicial Law Enforcement Center, and we're looking and scoping that project for solar. Same thing with the new public safety building that we're working on out at near the jail, looking at what solar would cost there. We're going through energy efficiencies in all of our Douglas County buildings. And then we also need to build resistance in our energy systems through innovative and collaborative policy. And I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about this one, because you might have heard about a little solar project that's going on north of town, right? And I think what's important to think about there is we as a community have a role to play in large-scale renewable energy. That doesn't mean that every piece of property in Douglas County is right for that. And no matter what we do, no matter what land we put it on, there's going to be a loss there. And I think it's really important to recognize that if we want to adapt or change or do something different than we're doing today, there is going to be loss. We can't stay with the status quo. But what's important is, while renewable energy is important, we have to understand how that impacts our neighbors. It may not impact us. We may have very strong goals around wanting to increase renewable energy in our community, but we have to think about how that's impacting our neighbors and then set policy. And that's the real work we've already done. We have wind energy regulations, we have solar energy regulations, and as each one of these proposals come to us, we have to deal with them one-on-one. It is not, the County Commission is not for or against renewable energy. What we are looking at each individual application as it comes forward and weighing those competing values on that. So I think I'm over my time, but happy to talk more on the next question.
Thank you, and we have given you a tough task to summarize in just a few minutes all that's going on, but it certainly starts the conversation well. Dr. Daley, what does climate change research tell us about the actions and timeline for action that are needed to reduce the burning of fossil fuels to slow climate change? And are we meeting those actions and timeline?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and talk to you about this issue, which is critical.
And you might move the mic a little closer just so that...
How's this? Okay. So I've been researching climate change for years, and for years I've been sort of a dark cloud in every meeting, like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And with the Biden administration and some of their successes, I'm unusually optimistic. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to broaden it even more than the commissioner. So I sort of think about things from the national point of view. Are we moving towards goals that will actually reduce climate change? And are we moving towards building a society, a country that is capable of adapting to climate change? And I think the first answer is yes. The Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act are game changers. So there's more sort of glimmers of hope on the horizon than I would have said even 2.5 years ago. And so early research analyzing the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, and days are still young here and things could change, suggests that we are moving towards reducing emissions in a meaningful way because of the kinds of investments that we're making across the country. It's really a total game changer. I can go through some of the details of that, and I'm happy to if you have specific questions. But I'll say, right, if you think through kind of the complexity of the US decision-making system, the complexity of our energy system, sort of looking at the role of buildings and infrastructure, looking at the role of transportation, looking at individual consumer choices. How do you create incentives that shape decisions about what cars to drive or how to get where you're going? Or how do you create communities where the traffic flow looks different? And thinking through those things is certainly has certainly been challenging, and putting policy behind it even more so. I think one of the more sort of tricky issues is related to the grid. When we think about some of the investments in clean energy and renewables, where is our fundamental infrastructure, and what do we need to do to get where we want to be by 2035 and by 2050? And the research there suggests a lot of decision-making challenges. So I think there's the technical research, which I think about climate change as a technical problem that we actually know the answer to and have a lot of tools to bring to bear. But as a governance and policy problem, it's a lot more challenging in terms of just deciding how we're going to work on this collective action problem. So I think the good news really is some of the most recent policy investments have already been bearing fruit in terms of emission reductions. Some of the challenges ahead, sort of that the research is looking at, includes getting states to act ambitiously. So some have, some haven't. We're in a state where some localities have, but the state itself could do a lot more. So one of the things that I study is, why do states innovate? Why are some states particularly path breakers and others are like brakes on, brakes on? Kansas has some challenges ahead of it in terms of making investments. And so we'll get to this, I'm sure, in the next question, but showing up and thinking who represents us and what we want is critically important. Sort of reflecting on some of the research and thinking about being here tonight with you all. Some of the challenges include the political horizon and whether or not in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, we're still implementing the kinds of investments that we've made, or whether we're changing course. That will make a big difference to what our emission profiles might be in Kansas, in the US more generally as well. So I'll wrap up. I'm happy to answer questions about sort of where the technical research is, where the social science research is, but it's definitely a challenging governance problem, less so a technical problem.
Thank you. Ms. Kong, representing citizens, especially young citizens, what actions to promote renewable energy and energy conservation do you expect to be happening now in Lawrence? The others on the stage do this for a living. You're living it, and will probably do that longer than the rest of us. So as a young citizen, what do you see, in your view, our current actions and are current actions effective to implement renewable energy and energy conservation to reduce burning of fossil fuels?
Hello, so yes, I'm a senior right now in high school, and I'm here to represent the younger generation, but I think a lot of what I was going to talk about was covered by other panelists, but just to point out some things that especially I notice, I think a lot of younger people see a lot of the visual changes. So the first thing is definitely like the buses. We're seeing more electric buses, and more people are using them as they're free now. We also have a lot of dams. We have more solar panels that I'm seeing around in our city. I think that was especially after, like mentioned, the 2013 change where the solar fees were reduced. And I'm also seeing a couple of wind turbines around the city, not much though. And I'm also seeing more use of electric vehicles and LED lights. I think those are also especially reducing the amount of emissions we have in our city. And just to touch base with the coal plant, if we think about how much energy we're getting from this coal plant, we're simply not having enough energy to close the coal plant right now. So although it was, from what I understand, supposed to close next year, it's been extended to 2028. And I think this is completely understandable from my view, because we're just not in a situation where our city can run without this plant. But regarding energy conservation and energy efficiency, I personally don't see much energy conservation happening around me. And although we're doing much, I think the younger generation could definitely have much more part in all these events, activities to reduce and promote renewable energy. Even I will admit, like, the little things like leaving a light on or leaving the AC running or heater running is something I'll do without thinking. And especially my school seems to be consuming electricity exponentially. Lights are always constantly on, even at night, and the temperatures at our school fluctuate unreliably. So who knows how much energy is being used there. And like mentioned, I'm also positive many other buildings in Lawrence are in the same situation, but from what other panelists have said, we've also already taken a lot of initiative to reduce that. And finally, I am seeing a lot of students know little to nothing about these topics. Asking a couple of friends, they really admit that they've never really considered how they can conserve energy or where their electricity is coming from. And without knowing about energy conservation and the problems that have arisen from non-renewable energy, it's very easy for the residents and students to turn a blind eye to the whole topic, which is currently what I think is happening, especially with the younger generation. But yes, that is what I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Pistora, what actions does the Sierra Club of Kansas recommend be taken by the state to reduce the burning of fossil fuels and slow climate change? And please tell us any necessary timeline about these actions.
Okay, thank you, Carol, and thanks for having me. And real quickly, for those that live in around the community here, I think you ought to be pretty proud of your leadership, your folks working on this stuff and the sustainability, your leaders at the city level and the county commission level for helping to lead the way, as well as our academic community and young people for thinking about all this stuff. I get a look at Kansas as a whole state, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of really positive, pioneering things happening in Douglas County and Lawrence specifically. So really pat yourselves on the back, all of you, for helping to lead the way, chart the future. Kansas Department of Health and Environment did a recent greenhouse gas inventory analysis of their own. There's federal opportunities exist now that allow for more investment into bringing down greenhouse gases and taking action on climate. And so the Department of Health and Environment did an analysis of the last 32 years, and we came up with a net decrease over those 32 years of about 6% of greenhouse gas emissions, okay? Not very good. We decreased it more on carbon dioxide, but we increased it more on methane and nitrous oxide, which are more potent greenhouse gas emissions. Who here thinks they know what the biggest category, the sector for the most greenhouse gas emissions in Kansas? Cattle? Well, I'll take that. Agriculture. Interestingly enough, big agricultural state, 35 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, led the categories that I reviewed. Not too far behind was making electricity, okay? Also buildings and all that take a lot of energy as well. So to answer your question, Carol, we need a lot of these strategies, all of them if you ask me, sooner than later, right? We're experiencing climate change impacts. Kansas has been part of over $40 billion related climate disasters, okay, in the last, I think, 40 years or so. And the number just keeps going up. I'm thinking right now about those folks in Florida and Georgia about to get hit with the Category 4 hurricane and the increasing speed of hurricanes getting bigger and stronger. I'm thinking about wildfires. I'm thinking about droughts and severe storms. Wind in Kansas, puts us at extreme risks and severe storms. So we have a lot to do, but there's a lot of promise. Kansas has some successful stories to tell. In just 25 years we've been one of the few states across the country to get more of our power from renewable energy resources than any other source. Okay, so 25 years ago, we were closer to 80% coal in Kansas. Now we're closer to 30%. And that's wind. And that's, 16,000 jobs or indirect jobs or something like that, billions of dollars of investment across the state, millions of dollars to landowners who put up their land to host these wind farms. But we could do a lot more with solar too. We're second to last in the country for solar as a state, but we have the top 10 resource. We're the 10th sunniest state, believe it or not. I wish we had the beaches as Florida, but we have as much sunshine as Florida. And Douglas County just approved a 158 megawatt solar farm. That single solar farm would double the amount of current solar across the state, just one farm, okay? So it's pretty amazing. That's why I wanted to open up with credit where credit's due. But we have a huge opportunity in solar. We can keep going with wind, but one that doesn't get as much attention is helping people save energy. We're tied for second to last among states to help their residents save energy. And for a conservative state, at least from what I hear up in the State House when I do my lobbying, why aren't we conserving energy? That's the easiest way to bring down electric bills, help improve the quality of life, and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our commercial buildings, our homes. I'll leave it there. Got plenty more to say, Carol, but I'll leave it there.
Well, thank you all for being so succinct on the first question. And the next question for all of you is, what's next? Thank you so much for kind of giving us the state of what's happening now, the goals for the future. But we'll ask each of you, what's the most important immediate thing that we need to do in Lawrence, that we need to do in Douglas County or in Kansas to reduce the burning of fossil fuels and to slow climate change? And add to that, because we can always give you more to talk about, right, in a little bit of time, what can individuals do? I think citizens, again, applaud our audience for being here. We all want to know what we can do collectively, but what can we do individually? And we'll start again with Kathy.
Thank you. So to start off with, I did want to, again, summarize a couple other initiatives that the City of Lawrence is working on that also lead into this, what I consider is we need to get, into action. We need to start doing all the things we're talking about. So one of the policies that was passed last year, the Sustainable Capital Projects Policy, really outlines for the City of Lawrence as we build new facilities that we're building them as energy efficient as possible. So I talked about all these other facilities we had to hire a consultant to do an energy audit on, which were very inefficient facilities. But now's the time to really plan well for the next facilities. For the next buses, I'm so glad you mentioned the electric bus. We are currently working on a zero emissions transition plan for our transit. So by 2035, all the fixed route buses will be electric. And we're working through, what the budget will be for that, what grant opportunities there are, and what's the infrastructure needed for charging all those buses, and so forth. So I'm so glad that was mentioned. So another thing for the City of Lawrence, we did participate in the drafting of our countywide climate action and adaptation plan, as well as the Kansas City Regional Climate Action Plan. Lots of great ideas and conversations came about with those two plans. Again, we really need to get into start implementing and doing some of that work. The best I can say is that we need to continue as a region to work together. It will not make sense for the city of Lawrence to be a silo and not be working in collaboration with our county to make some of these strategies and activities reach those goals that Patrick had mentioned some earlier from our Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. What can individuals do? Oh my gosh, so much. There's a lot of, and I bet all of you are doing something and you all have great ideas. But again, making sure that our homes, if you do own a home, are as efficient as possible. I would go there before exploring, solar or anything like that. But certainly, rooftop solar is something that a lot of residents are looking into, and some commercial customers as well, riding the bus or biking or walking instead of your vehicle. Getting a energy efficient vehicle or switching to an electric vehicle if you can. There's lots of options, lots of activities that you can engage in. Teach them young.
So again, I want to make a pitch for Adapt Douglas County. You just go on your website and find it there. Some of you are very familiar with it. It has specific strategies for individuals for addressing our climate change challenges. Some of them, Kathy mentioned one, is the efficiency in your home. If you own a home or you maybe rent and you get an energy bill, there's a way to sign up to get alerts on how much energy you're using, and oftentimes those energy companies will give you suggestions on how to reduce your energy consumption. Yes, solar and rooftop solar is an efficiency, but you need information on how to do that. When I talk to people in the community, they think, ooh, I'd like rooftop solar, but there's really no way to find out what that looks like. It really doesn't pay for itself right now. It's pretty expensive to do. So one of the strategies in the plan is to actually create a resource hub that's countywide, so it will give you information on how to increase your efficiency. What might you do about rooftop solar and those types of things? We didn't talk, we talked a little bit about transportation here. If you can walk or bike, that's better. My neighbor who lives right across the street, Jim, is here, and I'm disappointed I didn't reach out to him and say, are you coming to this so we could drive together? We should have carpooled. I take a class at Johnson County. I ride the bus to Johnson County. Anything you can do to reduce the number of trips that you make. We have a hybrid vehicle, so we don't need charging stations. However, we need a plan for charging stations across Douglas County. So Douglas County is working right now with MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, on creating a plan for where charging stations should be in Douglas County, so that as more people get electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles that could use charging, we have that available. So those are just a couple ideas. But before I finish, and even if I'm over time, I want to say something here about engagement, because I think we need people to be engaged on this topic. But I'm going to guess that a lot of you came here tonight with ideas or beliefs or thoughts about energy and renewable energy when you walked in the door. My question for you is, are you willing to hear someone else's perspective? Are you willing to ask questions, understand their perspective, to try to find a way to see for us to connect? What I've seen in my work is that we are working really hard to advocate for our positions and not listen to the other side, which leads to long 13-hour meetings of people saying things over and over again, rather than us connecting and really understand where can we meet in the middle. When it comes to vast energy policy, it's made at the federal and state level. We typically don't make that policy, but the experience and working on how to move when we move to energy is a local problem. And we have to be able to understand the other side. We have to be willing to maybe change our minds a little bit, or maybe not go as far as we'd hoped, in order to make some progress. That cognitive dissonance that's really hard for us to hold in our brain, that we want all the benefits of modern society, but we also know we have a fixed amount of natural resources, is really hard for us to sit in. It's uncomfortable, it feels disruptive, but we've got to get better at sitting in it and talking about it with people we disagree with. And I think that's the real challenge for us. So when we say engagement, it's not the same thing as advocacy. Those are two different things. I encourage you to really practice engagement. It's tough and it's hard, but that's where we'll really make progress when it comes to climate change.
Thank you. As I think about this question, the US is a very small proportion of the world's population and has a huge environmental impact. You can, there's places you can go online and look, answer a set of questions and figure out your ecological footprint. So on the individual level, there really are a range of things that you can do to impact climate change and the environment more broadly. And that ranges from your food choices to your transportation choices to your housing choices. And so I think there's a lot of stuff, and some of them are easier than others, and some of them are more controversial. On the sort of communal level, I think understanding the decision situations that you're embedded in, know your city, know how it works, know your county, know how it works, know your state, know how it works, know what each level is responsible for. We have EPA Region 7 in Kansas City, and they have a lot of concerns about climate change, and they're very easy to get to and talk to, right? So there are ways that you can also penetrate and engage with the federal government and see what's going on. There's a lot going on right now, and I think from the local government point of view, it can be daunting to figure out how to get the resources that the federal government is allocating. So I think staying engaged and trying to figure out resources as best you can. So for example, historically there's been a lot of money for homeowners to weatherize their houses. And there's support for that, and it goes from federal to state governments and down to local owners. Thinking through kind of the difference between a homeowner and a renter, and homeownership is becoming more and more difficult for people to attain. So what does it mean to have a bevy of apartment buildings that may be poorly constructed, right? So the sort of entire system that we're working in, the Harris administration or the Harris platform is saying 300 million housing starts. Will they be energy efficient? Or if the Trump administration gets in and they also have housing starts to deal with the housing crisis, will those be energy efficient? What are the incentives for developers? Similarly, I'd say thinking through how renewable energy investments connect to the grid. That's local land use planning, and that can be really problematic. So there's a lot of room for deliberation, conflict, decision-making, kind of, if this holds your interest, I think there's a place for people to be engaged. And vote.
Yes. From my perspective, for those around me, especially the younger generations, I think the main first step, it's very simple. It's just to increase awareness in these topics. Like I mentioned earlier, asking a couple of friends, I'd say only like 1 out of the 7 people I asked actually had an interest in renewable energy or energy conservation. It's very easy to turn a blind eye to, and I think especially getting the younger generations involved, I think, coming from me, it may seem a little weird, but I think really we are what will take charge in the world very soon. So if we don't know what's going on, as much as what we do in the outside world, if we don't know, then there's not much we can progress in. So really going off of what our panelists said, like increasing the efficiency of homes and transportation. But yes, sorry, yeah. The main thing I just wanted to say was really increasing just the community involvement in the younger generations, and then from there we can take another step to do what our commissioner is saying, where we can have more engagement instead of just advocacy. But yes, that's what I have to say.
Wow. Pretty amazing stuff here. A lot of good advice and lessons. I'll say that I became a lobbyist 14 years ago now because I felt that the youngest generation had most at stake in our environmental issues. And so I told the Sierra Club I'd work harder than anybody else. And so I've been trying to prove it ever since, hold up to that. And speaking of listening to those who don't always agree with you, I get a lot of that up at the State House. Other than the Douglas County delegation, a few others that get it, we got a lot more work to do on helping to provide awareness, educate, and just pull back the curtain of opportunity in front of us, right? We have this tremendous solar resource. We've already had a successful model with wind, as I talked about, and part of that came through policy. The legislature passed 20% renewable energy by 2020. At the end of 2020, where did we end up? Closer to 40% renewable energy. So sometimes just coming up with a goal goes a long ways. We can exceed the goal. We have some legislation. So that renewable portfolio goal hasn't been updated since 2020. Where's our 2030 goal? Where's our 2040 goal? There's no reason why we can't rely more on Kansas, homegrown Kansas energy that doesn't pollute the environment versus buying Wyoming coal. That's expensive. I think we can shut down our coal plants sooner than later. Why? Because our coal plants in Kansas, on average, run less than half the time. Okay? So we could shut down some coal units. We could refinance the debt that we have on those and invest in the technology that'll take us into the next 50 years. Our Lawrence coal plant is one of our oldest in the state, and it's one of our smallest. And so we should be able to turn that off. We don't want to invest in natural gas. Gas is in some mines just as bad as coal in terms of greenhouse gas emissions because of the methane. And remember, where are we getting that methane to burn, the natural gas? Well, we're fracking it, right, which has its own environmental issues. So there's a lot. We talked about agriculture being a big greenhouse gas emitter. Well, agriculture has the opportunity to take the carbon from the atmosphere and put it back in the soil to create healthy soils, to make the ecosystems underground a lot more beneficial so we can get more productivity. We can return more of our land to natural landscapes, to prairie ecosystems, to habitat and wildlife. Wouldn't that be nice? You know, green space, parks. We can do that, but Kansas is one of 15 states without a dedicated conservation funding source. So we should get that passed like we got water, historic funding for water passed, last year. So anyway, there's quite a few opportunities. I'd say that, and speaking of agriculture, we burn a lot of fossil fuels to create synthetic fertilizers. And our crops only take up about half of that fertilizer. So we could do a lot more in a lot of different realms, and all these transportation, agriculture, buildings, and saving energy and all that. So we can do all that. And then I can't forget, I'm thankful that got provided a glass, because plastics and the petrochemical industry is actually set to overtake coal-fired power plants in terms of greenhouse gas emissions in the next decade or so. So helping reduce your plastics individually, collectively. Thank you, City of Lawrence, for banning plastic bags. All right, and then all the education that went to that, the engagement. So I'll stop there, but not only can you do everything you can yourself, but part of doing things individually is, like we said, is do your part as a community. and as a state. And together, we can make some positive change systematically. Thank you.
Well, thank you, panelists. We did give you a hard task to take great big ideas and boil them down into an hour's discussion, and you did it so well, so thank you. Thank you for helping us, citizens, be better informed and engage in renewable energy and energy conservation. And as Patrick Kelly reminded us, it's not just those engagements, but also the result of climate change and how we deal with those. Thank you also to the library for co-sponsoring and hosting this forum. The next forum in the Public Engagement Series 101 series is Thursday, October 3 at 6 p.m. here in the library auditorium, and the topic is City of Lawrence Ballot Resolution 7442. Voters will determine this November whether Lawrence will have an elected mayor through that ballot resolution. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lawrence Douglas County, please vote in the November 4 general election and consider how your vote affects initiatives that promote renewable energy and energy conservation in state, local, and national races. Voter registration ends October 15. Early in-person voting begins here in Douglas County at the election office on October 16. Information about voting is available at our league table at the back. And thank you to the audience for attending tonight. You're invited to stay for individual conversation with our panelists. Please complete the audience survey and leave it in a box by the entrance. There's cards at the back. And your responses will be shared with our League of Women Voters study group on renewable energy and energy conservation. You'll find some handouts referred to in tonight's forum on the table by the entrance, including information about 2024 documentary, Hot Times in the Heartland. And if you haven't had a chance to see that, it's about climate change from a Kansas point of view. And the information will give you an opportunity to view it online. Please stay for conversation and a cookie, and have a good evening. Thank you.